Alright, let's get started and look at some of these problems. So number one, we're going to have a 1/5 x, and we're going to distribute the 3 inside. And so that gives us minus 3x plus 12 equals negative 2x plus 8. And there's a lot of different ways you can continue this problem, but I don't want to work with that fraction, so I'm going to multiply everything by 5. So I'm basically going to distribute that 5 to each and every term. The reason we do this is because this 5 and this 5 cancel out, because a fifth of 5 is 1. And so we get 1x minus 15x plus 60 equals negative 10x plus 40. Now we can combine our like terms over here and get negative 14x plus 60 equals negative 10x plus 40. So now we can start solving this. So I'm going to move the smaller variable, add 14x to both sides. And that gives me 4x. And I can also, in the same step, move 40 just to save a line. So I get 20 equals 4x. Now divide both sides by 4. And I get 5 equals x. Alright, so we're going to write an equation in slope-intercept form. First thing you just need to recognize is that we have an input with an output, and since I have two of these, I'm going to be able to find my slope. So I have my input of 1, output negative 1, input of negative 1, output of 5. And so now I just use my slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I get 5 minus negative 1, negative 1 minus 1. So this becomes 6 on top. On the bottom, that's going to become negative 2. And so I get a slope of negative 3. So now I'll use my point slope formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So I know my slope is negative 3. And I'll use this as my y1, so it's minus negative 1. So that makes my x1 1. So now we distribute. And so on the right hand side I get negative 3x plus 3. Here when we minus a negative turns into a positive, so y plus 1. Now finish it off by minusing 1 to both sides. And we get y equals negative 3x plus 2. So if you care about your grade, you'll take an extra 10 seconds to take your answer and check the other point that you haven't used yet. So I'm going to plug in the 5 for the y, the negative 1 for the x. We want to make sure that this works. So I get a positive 3 plus 2 does equal 5. So we just guaranteed we got that problem right. Alright, so let's graph this. So we'll start with the y equals negative 3x plus 4. So we start at our y-intercept of 4. And our slope is negative 3 over 1. So I'm going to go down 3 to the right 1, down 3 to the right 1, and draw a line. And then my next line, y equals 1, that's a hoi, so it's a horizontal line going through the y-axis at 1. And so we want to look to see where they cross. And so they cross at 1, 1. Alright, let's start with the top line. So we have our y-intercept of 4. And this is a positive 1/3, so up 1 over 3. Up 1 over 3, so I'm out of room. So now I'm going to go the opposite, down 1 to the left 3. And draw your line. My other equation is going to start at positive 2. And then my slope, now you only want to make one of them negative, so I'll make the negative, top number negative, so down 1 to the right 3. I'm out of room, so I'm going to do the opposite, up 1, back 3. And so these cross at negative 3, positive 3. If you got extra time, you'd want to take that point and plug it into both of them. So let's go ahead and just plug in the negative 3. The 3. So what happens here, a third of negative 3 is negative 1, and negative 1 plus 4 is equal to 3. And so that is a solution. And you could check the other one to verify that as well. Alright, so the directions say solve by substitution. You could solve it other ways if you really wanted to, but I'm going to use this one substitution because they both have y equals. And so it's kind of easy just to replace the y's. And so that would look like negative 4x plus 14. So now instead of writing y, I'm going to plug in what y equals, which is 6x minus 6. And so now we just solve this equation. Add 4x to both sides. So we get 10x, and then you can save yourself a line and add 6 also. And so I get 20 equals 10x. Divide both sides by 10. And so x equals 2. I'll plug it into the bottom equation. So x equals 2. So we get 12 minus 6, so y is 6. So I think the answer is 2, 6. So now we're going to take those numbers just to verify and plug them into the other equation, the one we didn't use. So the y equals negative 4x plus 14. So 6 equals negative 4 times 2 plus 14. Negative 8 plus 14 equals 6, which is what we wanted. So that tells us that that is the correct answer. Alright, same thing. We're just going to replace the y with what y equals. So it's going to be negative 4x minus 16 equals 2x minus 4. Going to add 4x to both sides. And so this gives us 6x. Going to save a line. Going to move the 4 over. So it gives us negative 12. Divide both sides by 6. So I get negative 2 equals x. I'm going to plug that into the top equation this time. So y equals 2 times negative 2 minus 4. Negative 4 minus 4 is negative 8. So I think the answer is negative 2, negative 8. I'm going to plug that in. Since I used the top equation, now I'm going to check it in the bottom equation. Into this one, y equals negative 4x minus 16. So I think y is negative 8. So if I'm right, 8 minus 16 equals negative 8. So it works. Alright, so now we're going to solve by elimination. When we solve by elimination, we want to have opposite numbers. And so you can see here, we already have a positive 2 and a negative 2. So we're good to just take these and add them straight away. So we get 2x equals a negative 2. Divide both sides by 2. So x is going to equal negative 1. So now I'm going to plug that back into, I'm going to use my top equation. So 7 times negative 1 plus 2y equals negative 15. Add the 7 to both sides. So we get 2y equals negative 8. Divide by 2. And I get y equals negative 4. So I think the answer is negative 1 comma negative 4. So since I used the top equation to get my answer, I'm going to use the bottom equation to check my answer. So negative 5 times negative 1 minus 2 times negative 4. So does 5 plus 8 equal 13? That's a yes. Okay, so I already have my opposites, positive 2, negative 2. So I can just take these equations and add them. And so I get 5y equals negative 10. Divide both sides by 5. So now I get y equals negative 2. I'm going to use the top equation this time to get my answer. So 2x minus 3 times negative 2 equals negative 12. So 2x plus 6 equals negative 12. Minus 6 to both sides. 2x equals negative 18. Divide by 2. X equals negative 9. So I think my answer is negative 9 and negative 2. So I use the top equation to get my answer, so I'll use the bottom equation to check my answer. So negative 2 times negative 9 plus 8 times negative 2. So I get 18 minus 16 equals 2, and that is correct. Alright, so now you can see that I don't have opposites. So you need to pick the variable you want to work with. For this one, I think I'm going to get rid of the y. So I'm going to multiply this top equation, the whole thing, by a negative 9. So this is going to give me a negative 18x, positive 9y equals 18. In the bottom, I'm just going to rewrite it. And so you can see now that I have my opposites. So now I can add my equations. So I get negative 8x equals 32. Divide both sides by negative 8. And x equals negative 4. So now go back to your original equations to get your answer. So I'm going to use the top equation. So 2x minus y equals negative 2. So I'm going to plug the x in. So 2 times negative 4. So when you move the 8 to the other side, the most important thing to remember here is that this y, you want to treat it as negative y. So we got to write negative y equals 6. Now divide both sides by negative 1. And we get y equals negative 6. So my answer is negative 4, negative 6. So I use the top one to get the answer, so I'll use the bottom one to check my answer. So 10 times negative 4 minus 9 times negative 6. If I'm right, that'll equal 14. So negative 40 plus 54 equals 14. And so that is correct. 14 does equal 14. So I got the right answer. Alright, so number 10, we're solving by elimination again. And again, we don't have opposites. I'm going to work with the y's. And the reason I'm working with the y's is because I have one that's positive and one that's already negative. And I only have to multiply the bottom equation instead of both equations. So I'm going to multiply the entire equation on the bottom by 2. That'll make that negative 12, and those will go away. So the top equation, I don't have to do anything to. So I'm just going to rewrite it. Negative 3x plus 12y equals 0. The bottom gets multiplied by 2, so I get negative 8x minus 12y equals negative 44. So now I can add these together and get negative 11x equals negative 44. Divide both sides by negative 11. And so x equals positive 4. I'm going to use the top equation to get my answer. So negative 3 times 4 plus 12y equals 0. So add 12 to both sides. So I get 12y equals 12. Divide by 12, so y equals positive 1. So I think my answer is 4, 1. So I use the top equation to get my answer, so I'll use the bottom one to check it. So negative 4 times 4 minus 6 times 1. If I'm right, this should equal negative 22. So this gives me negative 16 minus 6, which does equal negative 22. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to eliminate. So looking at these, you could get rid of either one. I'm going to choose to get rid of the x's because they're the smaller numbers. So I'm going to multiply the top by 5. I'm going to multiply the bottom by a positive 6. And so your goal here is when you finish multiplying that you have one negative and one positive. So on top, when I multiply, I'm going to get negative 30x minus 45y equals 150. On the bottom, I'm going to have positive 30x plus 36y equals negative 132. So the x's go away, and we get negative 9y equals 18. Divide both sides by negative 9, and we get y equals negative 2. So now I'm going to use the bottom equation. So I get 5x plus 6 times negative 2. So let's add 12 to both sides. So if you are not good with your negative and positives, you would just type in negative 22 plus 12. So this gives us negative 10. Divide by 5. We get x equals negative 2. So I use the bottom one to get my answer, so I'll use the top one to check my answer. I think the answer is negative 2, negative 2. So negative 6 times negative 2 minus 9 times negative 2, that should equal 30. So 12 plus 18, that does equal 30, so that means I'm good to go. Alright, so looking at these, I think I am going to get rid of, I'll get rid of the y's. So to get rid of the y's, that means I'm going to have to multiply the top by a 3, and that means I'm going to multiply the bottom by a negative 7. Again, I got to force these to be opposites. So since they're both negative, one of the numbers I multiply has to be negative. So on top, I'm going to have 24x minus 21y equals negative 45. On the bottom, negative 7 times 5 is going to be negative 35x plus 21y equals negative 21. So our y's go away, and I get negative 11x equals negative 66. Divide by negative 11. And we get x equals positive 6. I'm going to plug this into my first equation, or my bottom equation, so 5 times 6. So 30 minus 3y equals 3. Minus 30 from both sides. Again, if you're not good with your positive negatives, just plug this into your calculator. 3 minus 30 will give you negative 27. And as a reminder, if this has a negative in front, you got to make sure you include it down here. Now divide both sides by negative 3. Y equals 9. So I think my answer is 6, 9. So I'm going to check it in my top equation. So 8 times 6 minus 7 times 9 equals negative 15. So 48 minus 63 equals negative 15. 48 minus 63 is negative 15, so my answer is correct. So then here's number 13. I was going to do this problem, but I thought I'd leave this for you. Just kidding. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label my equations. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to look at these and figure out which one is the best one to work with. Which one's going to be the easy variable. The x's aren't too bad. We have positive, negative. I'm not going to work with the y's. But if you look at the z's, the thing that really makes an easy variable is having a 1 in front. So since these both have 1's, I'm going to eliminate the z's. So that's the variable I'm going to pick with, or work with. So I'm going to do equation 1 plus equation 2. Now when I work with equation 1, I need to have a 4 here. So I'm going to multiply that equation 1 by 4. So that's going to give me 12x plus 16y minus 4z equals negative 28. And I'm not doing anything to the second equation, so I just rewrite it. Negative 5x plus 5y plus 4z equals negative 14. So my z's go away, and so I get 7x plus 21y equals negative 42. And we'll call this equation 4. So now, since I worked with 1 and 2, now I'm going to work with 2 and 3. So I'm going to do equation 2 plus equation 3. And for the z's, that was the one I chose to eliminate to go away, I need to have a negative 4 there. So that means I'm going to multiply the second or the third equation by negative 4. So I'm going to take negative 4 by that third equation. So I'm going to just first start by rewriting the second one because I didn't need to do anything to it. Now multiply -4 by the third equation. So it's going to give us -12x minus 24y minus 4z, and 4 times 13 is going to give me a positive 52. So I have my z's that are opposite, so they're going to go away. So I get -17x minus 19y, and that's going to equal positive 38. Again, if you're not good with your negatives, just do -14 plus 52. Okay, so that's going to give me equation 5. So now working with these, unfortunately I don't have any really nice numbers here, so I'm just going to get rid of the x's because they're smaller. Let me rewrite it this way so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to have 7x plus 21y equals -42, and -17x minus 19y equals 38. Alright, so the easiest thing to do here is pick a variable, either x or y. So since x has smaller numbers, I'm going to multiply the top by 17, and I'm going to multiply the bottom by 7. They're already positive and negative, so I don't need to worry about that. So 17 times 7 is 119x. 17 times 21 is positive 357y. And 42 times 17 is going to give us a negative 714. Now let's multiply the bottom by 7. So 7 times 17 is going to give us negative 119x minus 19 times 7, 133y. And 38 times 7 is 266. So I got my x's that are now opposites. So now it's just 357 minus 133, which is 224y. And so I have different signs here. I have more negative, so I know it's going to be negative. So negative 714 plus 266 is 448, so negative 448. So now divide both sides by 224. And I get y equals -2. So now I want to take this and plug it into either equation 4 or 5. So I'm going to do equation 4. 7 times it's the y, so it's going to be 7x plus 21 times -2 is equal to -42. So 7x minus 42 equals -42. Add the 42 to both sides. And we get 7x equals 0. So what number times 7 equals 0? Or divide both sides by 7. So x has to equal 0. Alright, so I know my x, I know my y, so to find my z I have to work with one of the original equations. So I think I'm going to use the top one. And so it's going to be 3 times 0 plus 4 times negative 2 minus z equals negative 7. So this goes away and becomes 0. Minus 8 minus z equals negative 7. Add 8 to both sides. Again, like we've talked about, since that has a negative in front, bring it down. So negative z equals 1. Divide both sides by negative 1. So I believe that z is negative 1. So right now I think my answer is 0, negative 2, negative 1. Again, it's just in alphabetical order, x, y, z. So pick another equation to check it. We'll use the bottom one. 3 times 0 plus 6 times negative 2 plus z, which is negative 1. If I'm right, this should equal negative 13. This goes away. Negative 12 minus 1 is negative 13. So that works. So that should be the correct answer. Alright, so we're going to graph these. This is a HOI, so it's going to be a horizontal line touching the y-axis at 3. And so you look at the symbol, so if it has a line, you draw a line. So this doesn't have a line underneath it, so I'm going to do a dashed line. And less than would be the lower than, and so I would shade below. Now the other one, we'll do green, so I'm going to start at positive 1, and my slope is up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. And so now this has the line underneath it, so that means I draw a solid line. And it's greater than, so I shade above the line. If you're not sure where above is, just put your pencil on the y-intercept and go greater than 1. Well, greater than 1 would be 2, and so that means I have to shade above the line. And so you can see that I have overlap in this region, so let's see if the highlighter will work. I would shade this region. Alright, so let's start with this one. Our y-intercept is positive 3. The number in front of the x is 1, so our slope is 1 over 1, so up 1 over 1. Down 1 to the left 1. Now, look at the less than. It has a less than or equal to, so that means I draw a solid line. It's less than, so I would shade below the line. Now, the next one, our y-intercept is negative 3. Our slope is negative 5, and I can't fit negative 5 here going down 5 to the right one, so I'll do the opposite. I will go up 5 to the left one. Up 5. Again, it's not going to fit, so I'll just use those 2 points. So now look at this. It doesn't have a line underneath it, so you draw a dashed line. It's greater than, so if my y-intercept's negative 3, above negative 3 is negative 2, negative 1, 0, so I'm going to shade above the line. So you can see where they overlap, so this would be the region that I shade. So any point in that region would be a solution. Alright, number 16, we're going to set up a system here, and so senior class at high school A has 10 vans and 14 buses for 448 students, and high school B has 5 vans, 4 buses, and 158 students. So it says each one is carried the same, so we're going to write a system and figure this out. So I'm going to do 10V plus 14B equals 448. And then I'll use green for the next one. 4. Let's look at the vans. So 5V plus 4b equals 158. So now I have my system that I can solve, and so I would get rid of the v's, and to do that I would multiply by -2 and then solve like normal. I'm out of time, so I'm not going to work this one out. If you need help, let me know. Basically the same type of problem. Here we have $204 gets you 5 daylilies and 12 pots of ivy, or $132 gets you 9 daylilies and 2 pots of ivy. So when you write your equation, we're used to having it, some people are writing 204 equals, but we're used to having that constant on the right. So I'm going to do 5, I'm going to go ahead and let the daylilies be x, so 5x, and the pots of ivy be y, plus 12y equals 204, and then 9x plus 2y equals 132. And so if I were going to eliminate, I would get rid of the y's, and to do that I would multiply the bottom equation by -6. So work that out and let me know if you have any questions.